This is your Sound Off Extra review for WWE Extreme Rules 2017. I am the Solomonster. Extreme Rules just going off the air with Samoa Joe crowned as the number one contender for Brock Lesnar's Universal Championship at Great Balls of Fire. Yes, the announcers have begun the promotion and the hype for a pay-per-view called Great Balls of Fire. They're even using the Jerry Lee Lewis song in the commercial for the pay-per-view. So get ready for that. We've got about 5 weeks now of hearing about Balls on Fire. But Samoa Joe, I think in a shock. I did not expect Samoa Joe to get the nod here. I had predicted Finn Balor. And Finn Balor, for the record, got the biggest babyface reaction of anybody in that main event tonight. Every time he would be taken out by someone, especially Roman Reigns, the fans would loudly boo. Fans got pretty excited towards the end there when it looked like Balor might get the win. But then Joe came from out of nowhere. We'll talk about that main event later on. I like the finish. I like the finish because I wasn't expecting it and because I think Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar will be an awesome match. It may only go about 3 or 4 minutes, but I think for the time they're in there, hopefully it's not a squash. I think we can get a fun little all-out brawl between the two of them. So I like the finish. I like the main event. I thought the main event was really good. It was a very good match. But overall, I would have to say Extreme Rules, very thumbs in the middle. People were asking me, why did you put a thumbs in the middle option for your poll on Twitter? And I'll do the results of the poll, by the way, at the end of this review. The votes are being tallied. They're coming in as we speak. People are voting at Solomonster on Twitter. But I put a thumbs in the middle option, which I usually don't do. That should give you some sense of what I thought of the show. I thought it was a very thumbs in the middle, middle of the road effort. The thing that really struck me about this show is the fact that they call it Extreme Rules. And, the whole concept of extreme is just a holdover from a totally different era in wrestling, a totally different era in WWE. So you look at this show up and down the card, there really wasn't anything extreme about anything on this show. Roman Reigns got some blood on his cheek and in his mouth in the main event. That was about it. Alexa Bliss gave Bayley a bunch of cane shots. We had a cage match, no blood in there. But they call it Extreme Rules, and I think those of us who have been fans for any length of time look at a show like this and just sort of shake our heads like, why even bother calling it Extreme Rules? There's nothing extreme about it. So that really stood out to me that maybe they ought to rethink doing this show. That way they're not forced into doing stupid stipulations like kendo stick on a pole, which is pretty dumb, let's be honest. The other thing I noticed also is very heel heavy on the Raw brand now in terms of champions. In fact, I think all of the champions on Raw are heels. And I guess that depends on your view of Brock Lesnar. I still look at Brock and Heyman as a heel combo. You've got Miz now with the Intercontinental Championship. He's a heel. You've got Sheamus and Cesaro, once again the tag team champions. They're heels. Neville is still the Cruiserweight champion. He's a heel. And Alexa Bliss is still the women's champion, and she is a heel. So at the moment, the bad guys seem to be doing a hell of a lot better than the good guys on this show. So let's just run through this real quick here. We have Apollo Crews and Kalisto. They were in the kickoff match. Apollo Crews hit a standing shooting star press. Kalisto kicked out. Titus O'Neil all up in Apollo's face and just arguing with him and shouting at him. And they got in an argument. And Kalisto sort of shoves off of Titus, pushes off of Titus and hits the Salida del Sol on Crews, gets the pin, so Kalisto wins. It was fine. It was okay. Nothing special. Pay-per-view opened with the Intercontinental Championship match. And this goes to what I was just saying. Extreme Rules. And one of the feature matches on an Extreme Rules pay-per-view is a match where basically you're just teasing a disqualification finish. You're saying a championship could change hands on a DQ. Hardly screams extreme to me. But it was a well-worked match. They built everything around the disqualification, which was good and bad. So we have a point in the match where Miz almost collides with his wife, and Dean almost collided with Maurice as well. She was up on the apron. So Miz now almost hits his wife. He stops short, and the referee is distracted, and he's yelling at her. He goes, "Slap me. slap me, slap me. And I noticed him on Talking, I was going to say Talking Smack, on Raw Talk when the pay-per-view went off the air. Him and Maurice did an interview with Renee Young. And he denied that he said that, although he did admit that he likes getting slapped, which is TMI. But he said, slap me, and Maurice slapped him right in the face. And fans were reacting big to this because they figured, okay, that's going to be a DQ, and they seemingly wanted Miz to win. It sounded more like cheers and boos to me. It kind of reminded me of that Randy Orton-Christian match that they mentioned here on the pay-per-view from the Money in the Bank show in 2011 when Christian just... He spat right in Orton's face, and Orton, I think it was Orton who kicked him right in the crotch, and once people realized what had just happened, even though it was just this cheap DQ finish, they popped huge because they were excited to see Christian win the championship, even though he was the heel. But she did slap Miz. Referee did tease possibly disqualifying Dean Ambrose for that. He held back. He didn't do it. Instead, he tossed Maurice from the ring. And what followed was Miz shoving Ambrose into the referee from behind. So the referee is by the ropes. He's got his attention diverted. Ambrose collides with him. Referee falls out of the ring. And now the referee turns around. He sees Dean. He says, "You hit me." And he threatens again to disqualify Dean Ambrose. And Dean is just begging him not to. And the ref is taking his time. He's walking over to the timekeeper's table. While all of this is going on, I'm waiting for something to happen here, and all that happens is Miz sneaks up from behind Ambrose, hits him with the skull-crushing finale, and he gets the pin. Just like that. That was it. I thought, when he hit the skull-crushing finale, and the referee decided, okay, I'm not going to DQ him, let me run in and count this, that Ambrose would kick out at the last second, but he never did. And so Miz wins the championship. I will say that the... I guess you don't call them near falls so much. I guess you can call them near falls, but like towards the end of the match, down the stretch, it had good heat because people, whenever they threatened to DQ, the people were kind of into it. But it also hurt the match because the entire match was just the fans waiting for someone to be disqualified, which is a kind of a lame way to build up a match. And then a pinfall came from out of nowhere. So that was weird, but the outcome was the correct one. I'm not hating on the winner of the match. I think Miz is the right choice. I'm happy to see that he is once again the Intercontinental Champion. I didn't really think Ambrose added anything to that title, and I think Miz in that belt. They said he's second on the all-time list now in terms of the number of titles. He has 7. I think Jericho has, is it 10 or is it 9? 9 or 10. So Miz is well on his way. I think Miz will end up breaking the record. But I think he's the right person for it. I think he's the right... But now they just have to find some baby faces to put him in the ring with. That could be a good spot for Austin Aries if they move him out of the Cruiserweight division. I don't know what the future holds for him after what happened tonight. But I wouldn't mind seeing an Aries-Miz feud for the IC title at some point. The only thing is, what has Aries done to deserve that when he couldn't even win the Cruiserweight belt? Sasha Banks and the hometown boy, Rich Swann, against Alicia Fox and Noam Dar. The highlight of this was Sasha giving the double knees off the top rope to Noam Dar on the outside. And Swann threw Dar back in the ring. He had a Phoenix Splash, and he got the pin in his hometown. I think an angel got its wings tonight for that one. Actually, Swann used to have wings on his trunks, but he did not have them tonight. So the babyfaces get the win, and then they danced when the match was over. Again, it was a match. Nothing special. It was fine. Elias Sampson, the Drifter, had drifted into the ring. He had the spotlight put on him. He sang a song. Actually, before he did that, he asked the audience, "Who wants to walk with Elias?" And people booed, and he sang a song, and then the camera just drifted away to the next segment. That was it. Bayley and Alexa Bliss. Kendo stick on a pole match for the Raw Women's Championship. I'm sure Vince Russo's favorite match, I'm sure. This sucked. Plain and simple. This was terrible. And not because, anything that Bayley did or anything that Alexa did. I mean, they did what the plan was for the match, which was a quick match. I didn't time it out. I probably should have busted out the old Diva stopwatch. If this thing went longer than 4 minutes, I'd be shocked. They were up top scrambling for the kendo stick when it fell, and it was actually Bayley who first gained possession of it. The story here is that Bayley, who came into this match wanting everybody to believe that we were going to see her extreme side. We were going to see the hardcore side of Bayley. When push came to shove and she went to use the kendo stick, she couldn't do it. She didn't have it in her. She's not that kind of person. Alexa Bliss, on the other hand, she don't care. So when she got possession of the kendo stick, she whipped Bayley good with it over and over and over and over again. And then finally, in the end, she hit her DDT and she pinned her. Now think about this, okay? Think about this for a second. That horrendous segment that we had on Monday Night Raw, which Bayley, by the way, was poking fun at in an earlier promo. So again, they're fully aware of the fact that that segment sucked. But not only did it suck and was it not funny or entertaining on Monday night, it did a disservice to Bayley. It made Bayley look stupid for not coming out and interrupting earlier than she did. And in the end, she got laid out again. So you figure, okay, well, if she goes into Extreme Rules and she shows her extreme side, she'll win the championship, all is well. Not only did she not get to show a more vicious side of herself, she got beat like a scrub in a matter of minutes. So now I look back on that segment from last Monday, coupled with what we saw here, and, I hesitate to use the word bury that everybody loves to throw around so much, but I'll just say this. How lame does Bayley look after what happened Monday and then what happened here? And, you can always rehab a person. Bayley, she's got her fans, and, I'm sure in the end everything will work out. But there's just no reason for this. Bayley should have been the easiest person in the world to book. And ever since she got called up from NXT, they're like on crack or speed or something. The way that they put the championship on her within a few months, and then they took it off her. Now the booking here in this feud. And of course, what ends up happening is, and I heard it, and I'm sure a lot of you heard it, there were audible boos for Bayley tonight. Now, they weren't overwhelming. She was still cheered. She got a nice reaction when she came out, and all the little kids love her. But somebody like Bayley should not be getting boos at all. And Bayley traditionally was not getting boos. Not in NXT, not when she first got called up to Raw. But now, all of a sudden, there are the boos. And is it any wonder? Look at the way that she has been booked. So now some people are starting to turn on her. Well done, WWE. Well done. And I'm not, I can't even sit here and say, well, then maybe Bayley should turn heel. Bayley is one of the few characters who should not turn heel. That's what I mean. I mean, the fact that there's even a vocal minority of people in the crowd who are turning on this woman is an indictment on the booking of the people running this show. And so anyway, this thing was a big disappointment. The outcome, the booking of the match itself, everything was just completely ridiculous here. This was no good. We had the Hardys against Sheamus and Cesaro in a steel cage match for the Raw Tag Team titles. This was also, it's just a case where WWE likes to make the rules up as they go along. So in this case, they said no pinfalls and no submissions, which is fine. WWE always had the traditional escape the cage rule, which is what this was. But they said both members of each team would have to escape the cage in order to win the match. So Jeff Hardy was the first person out of the cage. Now we had to wait for Matt to come out. And so Matt's going back and forth inside with Sheamus and Cesaro. The heels get the advantage, and then Matt fights back. Matt tries to climb out, but they stop him. Finally, Jeff can take no more. He decides to climb up to one of the little platforms on the very top of the cage in one of the corners, and you knew Jeff Hardy, if there was a cage there, he couldn't help himself. He'd have to jump off. And he did. He hit the Whisper in the Wind from the top of the cage about 10 or 12 feet up, wiped out the heels. I guess the fact that he reinserted himself into the match made change the rules or something, and now all of a sudden it's like you're starting over again, like in a strap match when you hit 3 turnbuckles and the person pulls you away, you got to start over. I guess that's the logic here, but this just was stupid. This was really dumb because Matt eventually was able to get out, but now Jeff was back in the cage. And it comes down in the end, on one side of the cage, you have Sheamus and Cesaro climbing over trying to escape. It's a race to see who's going to make it out of the cage first. Matt's outside. He's dragging Jeff's lifeless body after that big dive, trying to drag him through the door, and he couldn't do it in time. Sheamus and Cesaro dropped down to the floor, and so Sheamus and Cesaro beat the Hardys. The Hardys' first loss since coming back to WWE. And we have new tag team champions. Just a very very confusing with what they were doing here with these rules. And I mean, as a match, I thought it was good. I wouldn't say anything blow away. It was good. And like I said, you knew Jeff wasn't going to be able to help himself. As soon as they announced that it was going to be a cage match, it's just a matter of what kind of dive is he going to do off the top. I think Matt learned his lesson after the match with Edge at Unforgiven all those years ago when he did the leaping leg drop off the cage that really screwed up his tailbone and gives him like the Jimmy legs. That injury really messed Matt up. That was a brutal spot. So Matt's not the one that you're ever going to see coming off the cage again. If anything, it'll be Jeff. As far as the outcome of the match goes, I'm not a fan of it myself. I don't know what's going on with the broken stuff with Matt. I don't know how long it's going to take for them to decide they want to use it or get the rights to it or whatever the situation is. People were chanting delete, 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 and some obsolete chants in there. I mean, that stuff is still over. Matt still doesn't seem to know what he's supposed to be. 1 minute he's Matt Hardy, the next minute he's broken Matt. He's still in this purgatory, it seems like. And I guess they'll get their rematch now against Sheamus and Cesaro. My whole theory was when they won the belts, figuring they would be broken soon enough, is that when the time is right and they lose the belts, that would be the impetus for Matt to kind of lose his mind. And that's where broken Matt would emerge. He just can't stand the fact that he lost the titles. Doesn't look like that's going to happen here. They're just going to continue the feud, so whatever. We had Neville and Austin Aries for the Cruiserweight Championship in a submission match. I saw a good amount of praise online for this match. I'll be honest with you, I was pretty bored. It seemed like a really good wrestling match. I guess maybe, given the two of them, my expectations were higher. It was a submission match, and so the fact that there was a lot of working over the knee, I guess sort of made sense, even though the knee didn't really factor into the finish. But I think, again, my whole thing with the cruiserweights is you got to let these guys go. It doesn't mean just constant dives with no selling and all that. But you have Austin Aries and you have Neville. And I know what these guys are capable of. And, they spend half the match selling the knee or selling this. And, at this point in the show, it's boring. Where's the energy, man? Where's the fire? Now, Neville did a hell of a job. Neville's a great heel. I'm a big Neville fan. And, he got the decisive win here. There was no ambiguity about it. When it came down to it, he landed the red arrow. And I was just talking about this on the podcast earlier, about how protected that finish is. He doesn't use it as much now as a heel. But you will rarely, if ever, I don't know that anybody has ever kicked out from a red arrow. And in this case, he landed the red arrow on Aries on his back and immediately put him into the Rings of Saturn. Now, he had Aries in the Rings of Saturn earlier. Aries would not tap. But in this case, after hitting the red arrow, he put the move back on, and Aries had no choice but to tap out. And so Neville is the champion still. My prediction going into this was that Neville would retain the championship with the hope that they'd be able to transition Austin Aries out of the Cruiserweight division, because I see him doing bigger and better things than that. I see Finn Balor hanging with the heavyweights. There's no reason that Austin Aries can't be hanging with that crew. Neville's got a good thing going for him in the Cruiserweight division right now, which is great. He should keep doing his thing. But I think it's time for Aries to move on. And Aries, I noticed on Twitter, was even teasing, it might be time to reevaluate my life and reevaluate my career after this. Hopefully that's a sign that maybe they will transition him out of that one little bubble that they have on that Raw brand, and he can start mixing it up with the big boys. But as a match, well worked. Some cool spots in there, but I just thought overall it was kind of dull. Main event was a fatal 5-way for the right to challenge Brock Lesnar, our absentee champion, at Great Balls of Fire next month on pay-per-view. Bray Wyatt, Roman Reigns, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, and Seth Rollins. And as I mentioned earlier, it will be Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe will challenge Brock Lesnar on July 9th, I believe it is, for the championship. It's a match we've never seen before. It's a match that some have called a dream match over the years. It's one of those matches, even going back to when Joe was still in NXT. Ooh, what would it be like if one day Joe could go up against Brock Lesnar? Well, now we're going to find out. And it's a little weird, and one of the reasons I hesitated to predict Joe when I was going over my predictions was because Joe's a heel. Brock's a heel. Some people might look at him as a babyface, but he's really not. And it's a weird dynamic because who do you get behind? You know, people might get behind Joe just by default because they either just hate Brock that much or they're sick of Brock never showing up. So in a way, you know, Joe may become the de facto babyface here because first of all, he does come off as a legit badass. He's got that swagger about him, that pissed off, swagger when he comes out, kind of the BMF walk that Steve Austin used to have. And I do think that people are tired of not having a Universal Champion on the show. Joe's a full-time guy. If he wins the title, all of a sudden we have a full-time champion back. Now, he's not going to win the title. I would be beyond shocked if he won the championship. Remember, it's his first defense, too. So for Brock Lesnar, after all the jobbing and everything he did to Goldberg, to finally get the big payoff at WrestleMania and win the title, beating Goldberg, and in his first defense 3 months later, to lose to Samoa Joe, of all people, you got to be kidding me. I can't see that happening. I wouldn't hate that at all, but there's no way. There's just no way that's happening. They will not tamper, I don't think, with their plans for Roman's big crowning at WrestleMania next year when he is the one to slay the beast. Because that's been the big question, right? I mean, we saw Goldberg do it, I guess, so that kind of ruined the whole thing. But who's it going to be? Who's going to be the one to finally slay the beast for good? And something tells me that ain't going to be Samoa Joe. But if they give those guys some time, and they don't need a 15, 20-minute match, if they give them a decent amount of time, I think they can go in there like two big bulls and beat the piss out of each other, and that could be a lot of fun to watch. I was picking Finn Balor. I thought he would get the win. That was another match that intrigues me. I know some of you listening just absolutely did not want to see that match. You cannot believe that, you know, you can't take that match seriously because of the size difference. That was one of the things about it that intrigued me, but whatever, to each their own. I don't hate the fact that Samoa Joe is moving on to face Brock Lesnar. Like I said, it's a dream match to a lot of people. What I'm looking forward to is, as much as the match itself, and I'm going to talk about what one of my fears are about that in a second, but what I'm looking forward to is the fact that we're now going to have, 5 weeks of Samoa Joe and Paul Heyman doing some verbal sparring on television. That could be a lot of fun. Because Joe's a great talker. Heyman is one of the best of all time. And now Heyman has somebody new that he can verbally spar with. And I think that might be a little bit of motivation for him. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see the verbal battles between those two in the weeks to come. And how they go about positioning Samoa Joe. Is he going to turn out of this whole thing? Just by virtue of him possibly bringing the championship back to the show and it no longer being held hostage. As far as the match itself goes, really good stuff. You know, you have 5 guys in there, so obviously one guy would go down and the spotlight would be on the other 2 or 3. Then those guys would go down and they went back and forth like that. I guess the highlight of the match probably was Finn Balor setting Bray Wyatt up on one of the announce tables. And he was going to go up to the top rope and do some kind of a move. I thought he was going to go up top and try a double foot stomp from the top rope to the announce desk, which would have been interesting. But he didn't get the chance. Somebody cut him off. And in the end, it was Seth Rollins who climbed up top, hit a giant frog splash, and crashed through Bray Wyatt on the announce table. Rollins had quite a few dives in this match. That's the new MO for Seth Rollins, by the way. He still favors the knee. He seemed to hurt his knee, I guess kayfabe, in this match a whole bunch of times. But, hey, it don't stop him from climbing up to the top rope and doing all these kinds of wacky splashes. So, obviously the knee can't be that hurt. The other thing about Seth Rollins, and this is so stupid. This is so stupid. How many weeks has it been now that this guy's been using that new finisher? Where he starts out with the Rainmaker thing and he hits the high knee, right? You would think by now there'd be a name for it. Nope. He goes for the move, I think it was to Roman, and he didn't hit it. But Michael Cole goes, he went for the knee. So apparently that's the name of the move, everybody. It's called the knee. What a creative name. Can you please come up with a name for this thing already? It's unbelievable. This guy's one of the top stars in the company. Changes his finisher, and they don't have a name for it. I just think that's incredibly stupid. Finish came, so you have Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins going at it. Bray Wyatt comes in and threatens to hit Sister Abigail, and I think he first threatened to hit Sister Abigail on Seth, but I think Seth got out of it. Then he was going to do it to Roman, but then Roman escaped it, and maybe I have the two reversed. But point is, he didn't hit it, and instead Roman hit a spear on Bray Wyatt. That's when Finn Balor came back into play, and that's when the people were going nuts. When Balor was able to hit the sling blade, and he put Roman down, and he went up top, and he was going for the coup de grace, people were going crazy. People were into Finn Balor. They wanted to see him win this match. He was the babyface that was most over, at least based on crowd reaction, even more than Seth Rollins here in this match. When he did hit the foot stomp on Reigns and seemingly had the match won, that's when Joe snuck back in. He locked on. Now they call it the coquina clutch. I mean, it's by this point, it's just a lazy sleeper hold. I mean, it's nothing unique about it at all. It's just a sleeper hold. But he put Balor in the sleeper hold, and he put Balor to sleep. And I guess that's the out for Balor. He didn't tap. He didn't verbally submit. He passed out in the hold. Referee was asking him, Finn, are you there? He went to pick up his arm. His arm went limp, and the referee called for the bell, and so Samoa Joe gets the win. You've heard me make comments on the podcast periodically over the last few weeks of all the horrible things that we've seen on Raw. One of the things that I've enjoyed as a Samoa Joe fan is how he has been handled largely since coming to the main roster. It would have been very easy for Samoa Joe, especially looking the way he looks, right? We can kind of get a sense of the things that Vince McMahon likes and doesn't like based on what we see him put out on his television show. And Samoa Joe, for all those years, you ask the question, why did it take so long for Joe to get to WWE? Why did it take a decade, whatever it was, for them to finally wake up to how good this guy was and bring him in? And you would always hear things about, it's his physique, or he's with TNA and they're not taking TNA guys. All of this nonsense. And so now finally he's here. He's doing his thing in WWE. He's called up to the main roster. And I start to worry because not everybody who gets called up to the main roster gets called up for the betterment of their career. But largely, he's been booked pretty well since coming up. He's certainly been booked as one of the top guys on the brand. And now here he is with four of the biggest stars on the roster getting the win and going to face Brock Lesnar at the next pay-per-view. Now, my only fear is that Joe's going in there to get squashed. That would be, I think it goes without saying, a terrible mistake. And Lesnar ain't going in there to be squashed either because they already did that with Goldberg. So what do you do? What do you do in this match? If it were up to me, I'd put the championship on Samoa Joe. I don't believe for a second that's going to happen. I think they'll have a slightly competitive match for maybe 3 minutes, and Brock's gonna hit the F5 and he's gonna win. That's how I see it going down, and that's gonna piss off a lot of people. But you wanted the match, right? So now you got to find your way out of it. And they have their WrestleMania plans, and I'm sure those WrestleMania plans are set. I'm sure it is Brock and Roman. It's not confirmed, but I think we could all see where this is going. And I just don't see them pulling the trigger and having Joe to be the one to take the championship off of Brock. But if it were me, I'd do it. It's become a problem now. There was a time where I didn't think it was that big of a deal. If Brock was the champ, all right, he'll be gone for a couple months, not a big deal. He'll make appearances every now and then. The fact that this is his first title defense, and it's 3 months after he won it, he has not appeared on a single show since WrestleMania weekend, is beyond ridiculous. At a time when this show just had its second lowest rating of all time, a 1.75 rating last week. Brock is hardly the only problem with that show. They got bigger problems with that show. But one of the problems is you have this great draw in Brock Lesnar. Well, what good is he if you can't use him? What good is he if he can't ever show up? I understand he's not going to be wrestling on Raw all the time, but he doesn't even show up. So you want to really shock me? Put the championship on Joe. Have Joe choke out Brock at the next pay-per-view. That would shock me. But I was convinced, as this match was playing out, I thought, oh my God, they're going to give it to Roman. They're going to pull out the Royal Rumble finish from January when Braun Strowman cost him the championship in that match against Kevin Owens. And I thought, well, Roman's going to win. And they're going to have Braun screw him out of the championship at Great Balls of Fire. So I was relieved that it did not happen that way. So this main event was a total thumbs up in terms of the match, in terms of the outcome. Big thumbs up, but I can't give a big thumbs up to the rest of the show because there just wasn't enough there, I don't think, to get too excited about. I think it was very much a thumbs in the middle show. So that's your Extreme Rules review. We will be back, I guess, in 2 weeks. We got another one of these things coming up. Money in the Bank, which includes the first ever women's Money in the Bank match. That's coming from SmackDown Live. So that'll be in 2 weeks right here on the YouTube channel. Actually, let me check real quick the poll results so far. Poll's going to be up for another 48 hours. But as of right now, we already have almost 600 votes. So there's going to be a lot more votes that come in, but so far, and see, this is exactly why I don't usually have a thumbs in the middle option and probably won't in the future on these polls, but I put it in here, and the reason I don't do it is because it's a cop-out answer, and everyone's just going to vote thumbs in the middle on all these shows. I like forcing people to pick up or down. When the show is over, what does your gut tell you? What does your gut tell you? Like if I had to say thumbs up or thumbs down on this show, I would say thumbs up. I would say an unenthusiastic thumbs up on this show. That would be my view. In the poll so far, we have 39% thumbs up, 43% thumbs in the middle, and 18% thumbs down. So that is where things stand right now. Again, you can vote. It's not too late. At Solomonster is my handle on Twitter. Check out the full podcast each and every Sunday. We had 2 podcasts go up this week. A rare Tuesday sound off. I just could not wait. I had to sound off on that horrendous show last Monday. That was 498 part 2, and then part 1, I should say. And then episode 498 part 2 went up earlier today, covering all the stuff I did not cover on part 1. So SmackDown Live, the return of Lucha Underground. That was a great show. NXT, whole bunch of other stuff. So you can find it on thesolomonster.com. It's on iTunes and Stitcher and all those different platforms. So I am the Solomonster. I bid you farewell. We will be back with another pay-per-view review here on the YouTube channel in 2 weeks for Money in the Bank. And also, don't forget, as I announced earlier today, I am celebrating 500 episodes of the Sound Off with a live Sound Off YouTube stream here on the channel on Saturday night, June 17th. At 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on this channel. Episode 500 will go live with video right here on YouTube, and it'll be interactive. We'll have the chat going. We're going to take your phone calls. It's going to be a lot of fun, so bookmark that, June 17th. Until then, be well, stay safe. See you back here for more Sound Off real soon. Until then, take care, guys.